Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over Bitcoin and also the Bitcoin miners, as well as other macro indicators. So with that being said, let's get it. So the first thing I want to point out to you guys is we're actually going to go out here to the monthly. Why do I say this? Because every single time Bitcoin has ever, and I mean ever, well, we don't have 2013, 14 here, but pretty much since 2017, every time this thing's ever gone into a macro bear market, it has broken the monthly trend line. As you guys can see here, broke the monthly trend line, bear market, broke the monthly trend line, bear market. Well, it was already in a bear market in 2019, but it did still go down from that point. And then it broke the monthly trend line. We're not counting the wicks on this one, just the bodies. The body candle broke here in December, and then guess what happened? Bear market. So where does the trend line currently sit? It sits roughly at about the support zone. So basically between roughly about 30 to 37,000. That's also kind of where the EMAs are. But if we, in another 15 days, have a candle body close above this resistance, that's very bullish. That means we're going higher. So as of right now, the monthly trend line is still intact, which means that the bull run is still on for Bitcoin. So another thing that I want to point out here is the potential for a cup and handle pattern. If this thing gets stopped and pulled back into the resistance, we could see this cup and handle pattern play out. Generally speaking, it's actually quite difficult to measure what the handle portion of it's going to be, but I would say based on this potentially turning into support, the bottom would be somewhere around 59,000. So we could see like a slow drag into the halving, and then boom, pop up after that. Maybe like, I don't know, it drags for like a month or two and then starts ripping to the upside. It's hard to say, honestly. We generally don't see Bitcoin go to new all-time highs before the halving. It usually happens the end of the year of the halving, which is this year, but closer towards the end of the year. So we do actually have also a weekly new candle close here, as you guys can see this previous week, with the close being at roughly about 69.5. And looking back at the charts, you guys might say, yeah, well, it had a higher high close from April to November of 2021, and then it went into a bear market. Yes, that is true. But something to keep in mind is when this happened, this was nearly a year after Bitcoin broke its all-time highs, and it was also the year following the year of the halving. So the halving had already taken place, and it was in a year after that. We are not even at the halving yet. The halving is still a month away. So the EMAs currently sit basically between top of support, 38,000, to this March swing high back here at 48,000. So that's a potential pullback zone. It could pull back and stop at 59,000. That's also possible. We'll look a little bit deeper into this in a minute. Let's get into the indicators. So Bitcoin has 35 days left in the halving. As you guys can see, this is a rough estimate. The coins mined per block is going to decrease from 6.25 to 3.125. So major decrease here. The last Bitcoin is not expected to be mined until nearly 120 years from now. So yeah, I would say that Bitcoin's probably going to be around for a long time. So Google Trends, crypto. The term crypto went from 22 to a 0. Not really sure how this works or if this is even real, or maybe it's just because it's on the weekend or something. I'm really honestly not sure. Let's actually take a look at a smaller time frame here. We'll do the last 7 days. So yeah, it's not 0, but for some reason on the weekly it's showing as 0. So that, or not the weekly, the 5-year time frame. So this is a bit odd, but basically, I think what happened is probably Bitcoin hit that $73,000 level, and then it dumped, and everybody was probably like, "Oh yeah, whatever, it's going to 0, or whatever." It's not going to 0, guys. But you have to understand, this is the mindset of retail traders when they jump in when crypto is the hot gravy train. They do it when it's going up for months on end. Okay, and by the time they even realize that it's, it's the fastest horse in the race, They're buying in at the top, and then they're getting dumped on by all the smart money, the whales and the smart retail traders and institutions that were buying at lower prices. And they know what they're looking at. They're not just, aping in randomly with no guide on how to get in and out or anything like that. They're not probably not even following crypto influencers. They probably just buy randomly and just be like, oh yeah, it's just going to go up forever. But they're very simple-minded people. They're not actually really taking this seriously. So they clearly do not understand the risk they're getting themselves involved into if they do something like that. But Bitcoin, as you can see, very similar thing. This is a bit strange, but again, it's probably just because Bitcoin hit 73,000 and it dropped, and everybody thinks like, oh yeah, whatever, it's over. It's not over, guys. The halving's coming, and every single time Bitcoin's ever had a halving, it's eventually smashed all-time highs, and then that's just been the end of that. So, fear and greed index, we are at extreme greed now. As you guys can see, we're at an 81. This is another reason for a potential pullback in Bitcoin. Of course, the counter argument to that is the Bitcoin spot ETFs are just constantly buying Bitcoin every single week, like lots and lots and lots of Bitcoins. So we could be sitting at these levels for a while. We'll just have to wait and see. MVRV is still very cheap. We're not even close to the top according to this metric, because last time we got into that light green or light pink shade. Nearly every single top before that, we were in the dark pink. So according to this, we are not even close to the top. Bitcoin rainbow price chart, still in the accumulate zone. By the time we get to the halving, interestingly, hold on a sec. Yeah, interestingly, it's actually not. It's not showing for some reason all of the prices at one level, so that's kind of strange. But so we're basically going to look at pretty much roughly around the end of the year next year. So I would say a realistic target's probably going to be about that $250,000 level. Yeah, it lines up pretty much perfectly with the. You guys can see it hit the darker orange here. So if we got to the light orange by basically the end of. Where's the light orange? There it is. So if we got to the light orange by the end of. Oh, my bad. I guess I was mistaken. So it could be as high as 400,000 according to this. If we hit the yellow, then 284,000. Green even, that's still pretty high, roughly about 204,000. So a long ways to go up. We're not even at the halving, as you guys can see. Once we hit the halving, this thing just absolutely rips. So Nupal getting kind of up there in terms of net unrealized profit loss. Generally speaking, when we're not at the top, this thing is low. When we are at the top, this thing is high. Because not everybody buys Bitcoin at the bottom or cheap prices, just so you all know. So I would say this is a more bearish indicator than bullish. It does look a little overextended, if you ask me. Roughly about 64% of people in profit. So it's not at absolute peaks, but it's getting a little pricey. So anyways, one other thing I wanted to point out to you guys is the 4 hourly time frame. So this is generally speaking what we use to swing trade, okay? When we place a swing trade, we use almost exclusively the 4 hour time frame. Sometimes we'll use the daily and weekly as a potential setup, but I'd say like 90% of the time when we swing trade, it's always the 4 hour chart. And we know for a fact that we are not the only traders on the planet that do this on this time frame. So going back here in Bitcoin's history a little bit, I want to point this out to you guys. So the last time that we had a death cross on the EMAs was back here in January, basically at the start of the year. We did not have one here. There was no death cross. We just had a pullback into the EMAs. Again, a pullback into the EMAs. And we have not had a death cross, although we did not have a pullback into the EMAs either. We are below the EMAs here. So my point in mentioning this is that there could be a more substantial pullback to come. I would say that the first Let's actually zoom out to the daily here so it's a little easier to see. If it does go lower, I would say the first potential bounce area would be, well, 68,000 is a possibility, but it could also go down to roughly about 63,500, or maybe as low as 59,000. I would say all of those are possible. Just keep that in mind. So we're also going to take a look at the Bitcoin's Pi cycle top indicator. So no Pi cycle top indicator here, which is to be expected because generally when the Pi cycle top shows up, it always shows up after the halving, like a really long time after the halving. As you guys can see, the halving was in May of 2020. We didn't get a signal for almost a year after that. So that is something to keep in mind. So we're going to go ahead and get back to this 51 EMA here. Oh, maybe not that dark of red. Yeah, I can't even see that. So 51, there we go. So where could Bitcoin pull back to any of those previous levels mentioned? On the weekly, I would say it could potentially go all the way back to 48,000 to 44,000. I don't think that's likely. I think the absolute maximum drawdown would be roughly around somewhere between 52 to 58,000. I don't see it going lower than that, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, it may not even go down to 58,000. It might stop at 63. We'll just have to wait and see. So that covers the Bitcoin chart and the prices and indicators themselves. Something I wanted to show you guys before we go into the miners is roughly what the Fibonacci's are telling us the potential price targets could be here. So first fib level, roughly about 100,000. Second fib, you're talking 150,000-ish. Third fib, 202,000. And the last fib would be roughly around 235,000. That's based on the macro swing highs and lows. So let's get into the miners. All right, so Mara, basically your support is where it currently is. So $18 to $19.80, resistance 28.30 to 33.20 if you manage to get in now, which is entirely up to you. The immediate short-term move would be about 57 to roughly about 75%. Riot, this one is also getting very, very close to current support. So, I mean, we did actually swing trade Riot, tried to swing trade it back here, but we got stopped out at that. We got stopped out before it lifted off of the zone. We could have made at least a 2x our money, but is what it is. So current support is between roughly about $8.50 to $10, and current resistance between $18.60 to roughly about $21. So if you chose to get in now, you'd be looking at 63 to about 83%. If you chose to wait and say, screw that, I'm getting in at the zone, it'd be at roughly about 104 to 132%. So HUD 8, this is one that we actually own. We own HUD 8, BTPT, and Cypher. It is currently in the buy zone. You scroll back here, you guys can see this is major support here. So the buy zone currently is between 357 to roughly about 864. Resistance is 1725 to about 2250. If you decided to get in now, the move would be huge. It'd be 132 to about 208%. Okay, what the heck is going on here? Let's get rid of that. Sorry about that. Okay, so BTBT is getting very, very close to support here. So that is going to be roughly about $1.50 to $2. Resistance is $4.15 to about $4.80. If you decided to get in now, the measured move would be about 87 to roughly 120%. If you wanted to be a little more patient and wait and see if it gets back into that zone, of course, you have this major support here right at the top of support. All these candles just held, so I would say it's not likely to go lower than that, but if it does, and you get in the middle, roughly about 130% to as much as, could be as high as maybe 190% or so. So Cypher, this one's kind of just bobbing around. It's not as the buy signal is not as good on this one as it is BTPT and HUD 8. But support is between 220 to 265, resistance 490 to about 550. If you wanted to get in now, that's entirely up to you. It'd be about a 38 to 59, 60% move. If you wanted to wait for support, you're looking at about 97 to 124%. So pretty good move on Cypher. BitF, this is actually in the current support. So current support is $2 to about $2.30 a share. Resistance is $3 to about $3.60 a share. If you wanted to get in now, you'd be looking at about 32 to 59% move. So one last thing we're going to go over here before we close this video out is we're going to do the potential macro moves and targets here on some of these miners. So as you guys can see, the fib levels here are absolutely insane. So Mara, you'd be looking at 130, 212, 294, and as high as 340 a share on Mara. Based on the previous cycle moves, I would say that's possible. So if we go back to Mara here, you guys can see this thing basically went from $1.50 all the way up to $83. So you're talking like, I don't even know what that would be. That's like a 60, 50, 60x or something like that. So I would say those fib levels are definitely possible. So we'll do the one on Riot now. So Riot actually looks kind of almost a little bit more ridiculous than Mara does. But again, the smaller the market cap, the bigger the move. You guys got to remember that when it comes to these different trusts and miners and stuff. So 130 on the first level, 200, 280, and then 325 respectively. So absolutely massive moves from here. So the top fib, you'd be looking at like more than a 30x. So this is HUD 8. So measure it down to the very bottom here. You guys can see that the fib levels are pretty up there. So 135 on fib 1, fib 2, 215, fib 3, 295, and the top level, $340. So to get to the 340, I mean, let's just calculate this real quick. So 340 divided by 7.5 is huge. So that's a 45x move. That's a massive move. That's actually quite small compared to some native cryptos. And even some of the grayscale trusts, I would say, but it's still pretty large for a Bitcoin miner. So this one is BTBT. We'll do the measured move here from the top to the bottom. Some pretty good targets. So 55, let's see, 85, 120, and 140 respectively. So huge moves. I mean, from $2 to 140 is a 70x. But again, keep in mind, the smaller the market cap, the bigger the move. BTBT, HUD 8, and Cypher are the smaller Bitcoin miners. It's Riot and Mara that are the big ones, the big boys in the Bitcoin space. So Cypher, this one didn't have as big of a move in the previous cycle, but you guys can see it came out basically during the later part of the bull run. So it didn't really actually have a bottom per se. So fib 1, $25, and then you got 39, 55, and 63. So pretty huge moves, roughly about a 20x to the top. So we'll take a look at BitF. If you guys want any other Bitcoin miners in these videos, just let us know in the comments below and we'll try to get to it, okay? So $16 on the first one, $25.70. Then you have about $35.30 and $40 at the absolute tops. So you're looking at potentially as much as maybe a 15, 20x on this, which is still massive. I mean, a 15x is huge. To get a 15x in any given stock, you would have to probably buy it at very cheap prices, at like $5 a share or something like that, and hold it for years on end. So, I'd say crypto definitely has stocks beat in that aspect. But again, crypto is very volatile. It's super risky and it's very fast moving. So, anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see y'all later. Peace.